So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ahmadu wa usalli ala Rasulil Kareem, amma ba'd. I'm very excited today to talk about UFOs and many issues that relate to the whole UFO phenomenon. And Alhamdulillah, I have Brother Charles Upton, who is, written on this and thought about this, and I guess knows a lot about this. And then I also want to chime in from time to time and say my 2 cents on the whole issue. And so, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Brother Charles, please, why don't we start with what you have to say?
Well, UFOs, I guess I should explain why, if I indeed myself know why I started writing on UFOs. I recently published a book late last year called The Alien Disclosure Deception, the Metaphysics of Social Engineering, because I believe the UFO phenomenon is real, but it's also being piggybacked upon.
Can you say the title one more time so I can show it to
you? The Alien Disclosure Deception, then the Metaphysics of Social Engineering. The first title ought to be enough.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. And
let's do it over here.
Yeah.
Everyone. So
yeah, and
everyone that's interested, definitely read this book.
I would agree. So the reason I use the subtitle, The Metaphysics of Social Engineering, is that I believe that although this is a real phenomenon, which has been going on throughout recorded history, which became much more prominent after World War II for some reason, there are powers that be in the world, in the military-industrial intelligence complex, you've got to call it, who've been piggybacking on this phenomenon and giving a certain spin to it, and claiming certain things about it in order to shift the consciousness of the United States and actually the world away from belief in God, a belief in Allah, and toward belief in aliens. And they've been very successful at this. And one of the major parts of the myth that they are presenting is that we were not created by Allah. We were created through genetic engineering by the UFO aliens. Therefore, they are our guides and our protectors, and we should listen to them and follow them. And then if the government can say, and of course we're in contact with them, then the governments of the world who are involved in this deception become the high priests of a new pagan religion, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. This is interesting because once they have people believing in the UFO, they can do multiple layers of social engineering.
Yes.
Okay, so like, for example, what's interesting about what you said is that, okay, so UFOs was a replacement of God, right? You look at space and you think there must be something out there, right?
Yes.
Can't all be empty.
Yeah.
And that's what that would be the natural inclination of fitra. So they replace it with this artificial idea of the UFO. But as the world shifts from atheism, materialism, to radical religion, whether it is radical in Hinduism, which is also on the rise, and radical Christianity, which is on the rise, radical Judaism is on the rise, and radical Islam is part of that whole global phenomenon that is on the rise. And so now they can shift this from being a tool of atheism to a tool of social engineering for religion.
Yes, or both concurrently.
or both concurrently, and
Because
everyone
I've been
interprets.
seeing, in the UFO myth, one of the things is once we know that the UFOs are real and we're in contact with the aliens, all the old religions will be swept aside. But that doesn't mean that they are not trying to pervert and control the religions, because there are still billions of people who believe in them. So that's all going on at the same time.
Yes. And so and what's interesting, this idea of being in contact with the UFOs, right? It's like being in contact with the divine, which is what prophecy and prophethood is about.
Yes.
And so I just keep that in mind as maybe we progress in this. Okay, so Bismillah. So what else do you have to say? And then I'll start chiming in my little pieces.
Well, it's a very big subject. Uh so my book has a number of approaches. Talking about the phenomenon itself and why it's an actual phenomenon. It's not all hoaxes. It's not all mental illness. It's really there, and this is pretty well being accepted by more and more people, as well as by the Pentagon and official sources. But what I say is that the manifestation that we call the UFOs, both just the sightings or the close contacts, the abductions, the whole spread of UFO phenomenon, much more clearly fits the profile of the jinn, or of as are now being called today, interdimensional beings, than astronauts who have come long, slow route through space from distant planets. But this is becoming more and more acceptable too. People, in the midst of generating the UFO myth and maintaining the UFO myth, will say, and maybe they're extra, maybe they're from other dimensions. That's becoming more and more acceptable. It may not be talked about in Senate hearings right away, or it may, but that's next in line to be an acceptable idea. And so these are apparently the jinn. Now, what I believe is these phenomena have been going on, for all throughout recorded human history, and we know this if we look back. Jacques Vallée, who is, I think, the most reliable ufologist, has a book called Passport to Magonia, where he talks about a lot of similarities in ancient folklore to today's UFO phenomena, which pretty much corroborates the theory that these are the jinn. And so that's one thing I do is talk about that aspect of things. But then it seems to me that the military and the intelligence community at one point was saying, we don't know what these things are and we can't control them, but we can certainly use them. We can craft a myth so whenever a UFO appears, it will appear to corroborate the myth we are projecting. And one of the ways they did that was to create what I call unconscious contradiction. There was a line of debunking UFO mythology. The official General so and so comes out and says, really, there is nothing here. It's all swamp gas and weather balloons, and there's nothing to worry about. And at the same time, the same people are releasing information clandestinely to the populace, to people that they consider to be UFO lunatics who will believe this stuff, which seems to indicate that the UFOs are real and that the government is in contact with them. And these two lines are going at the same time. And this creates a cognitive dissonance and muddies the waters and makes people very suggestible. So I believe this has been done consciously. Now we're getting to the point where the debunking is being debunked, and the powers that be are coming out more directly with saying UFOs are real, but when will they start to say yes? And you're right. You know, you've twisted our arm. You've forced our hand. You've made us admit it that we have indeed been in touch with these beings, you know, for quite a while. You know, and this will come pretty soon. So, well, that's the use of the UFO phenomenon by the powers that be for social engineering. There's a deeper level, though, unfortunately, in which some of the powers that be have undoubtedly actually been in touch with these beings, but in the way that a pagan magician would be in touch with a jinn or a demon, you know, and the giveaway about that level of things is Jack Parsons. Everyone should study the life of Jack Parsons, because he reveals more aspects of this phenomenon than any other single individual. You know, when you talk about actual encounters between people who are high up in, you know, the military, the corporate world, the intelligence world, and demonic or jinnish forces. Now, you know, the well-known black magician, Aleister Crowley, back in, I think, in the 19-teens, I don't remember exactly the year, did a magical invocation which he called the Amalantra workings. And in doing this, you know, what he was trying to open up a portal to another dimension. And he claimed to have done that. And he claimed to have contacted a being, which he called a collective being, from that dimension, whose name was Lam, Lam, you know, like the Arabic letter Lam.
Yeah. No.
And he drew a picture of this being, and the picture very closely resembles our image of the alien gray being.
The gray,
in fact, that's the first manifestation, first appearance of the alien gray, as far as we know, you know, as an image, you know, which now has become, you know, the standard image of the UFO alien, you know, that can all be traced back to a black magician, Aleister Crowley. Now, among Aleister Crowley's students were L. Ron Hubbard, who founded Scientology, and Jack Parsons, and they were both part of Crowley's Thelema religion, and they were at the Thelema Lodge together in Los Angeles. And so Jack Parsons, you know, didn't found a cult like L. Ron Hubbard. He went ahead and to become a recognized rocket scientist. He was a co-founder of the Aerojet Corporation and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He used to do pagan invocations at his rocket launchings. There's a crater named after him on the dark side of the moon, the Parsons crater. And so he very much integrated into the scientific establishment in the United States. And he said, my purpose in life is to destroy Christianity. He came out and said that. He was the true mad scientist. Here he is. And
what that by extension means, the destruction because of the globalization of, or the hegemony of Christianity, what that by extension means, the destruction of all religions because of you know.
Well, indeed, and now Christianity was largely you know, deeply damaged when there was the Second Vatican Council, you know, which destroyed traditional Christianity and put a sort of a counterfeit Catholicism, I mean traditional Catholicism, put a sort of a counterfeit Catholicism in its place. And like I say, when it came to Islam, that wasn't as easy to do, and so the destruction had to be by more military means. But you know, the different modes of attack for different targets. But the target is to liquidate or control whichever comes first, whichever is more possible, whichever is more convenient, all the religions of the earth. This is what these people are doing. So anyway, Jack Parsons, I found something on YouTube. See if it's still there. Jack Parsons was doing something, another magical invocation like Aleister Crowley did, except his was called the Babylon workings, Babalon workings. And he was doing this with an audience at one point, and somebody filmed it, and somebody was interviewing him, and he had this little device here, this box, and he said that this is like an electronic Ouija board, and this is how we invoke demons.
Oh, okay.
And the demon he was invoking was Babalon, Babylon, which is supposedly a female demon that he was working with. And this is understandable because when UFOs appear, very often they will affect electronics. You know, car engines will die and other things. So it's entirely understandable that if you have some device that has something like a magnetic field, and you can modulate the magnetic field with keys, and then, you know, from the other side, from you know, the realm of the jinn, they can affect that magnetic field and talk back. That seems like a rather rudimentary device once you accept that the jinn can affect electromagnetic realities, magnetic fields, things like this. Sure, I can understand that. So Parsons, you know, a very very prominent member of the military-industrial complex, his life came to an end when he blew himself up in his laboratory, which is
Interesting.
Strangely appropriate seeming. So, you know, it is possible, if you look at someone like Parsons, to say that there may be people in the military, the intelligence community, who have contacted or been contacted by these jinnish forces and are in ongoing communication. You know, in other words, they are black magicians.
Yeah, over here I want to mention maybe a series of things that will be interesting for the audience, and I think each one of them can be like an episode in itself. The first is the relationship between the scientists and the occultists, because there was many. It's just so strange to me, Brother Charles, that how many occultists were part of the Royal Science Society? I mean, it's like, yes, it would be like, you know, you wouldn't consider that. That's like oxymoron, right? And so,
well, I mean, science and technology in earlier ages were the same thing. You know, Isaac Newton was an alchemist. He did extensive studies in alchemy. Not to say that alchemy, you know, alchemy can be, I believe, a spiritual science legitimately if it's within a particular religious revelation, particularly Islam. But it's also capable very easily of becoming a kind of a heterodox occultism and a dangerous practice. And so, you know.
Yeah, and so that was the first thing I wanted to mention is the you know, and this is where the whole of science really started from, is the Royal Science of Royal Society. I forget what it's called in England. And then the second,
the Royal Society is the big,
oh, okay, the Royal Society,
scientific society, yeah.
And then the other thing that became interesting is their obsession with space and trying to get to space. And the reason that connects with the jinn world is that, according to the Quran, after the Quran was revealed, they were stopped from going into space. Right. And there's a surah, Suratul Jinn, which mentions this particular fact, that they were stopped from going into space. And so this kind of like obsession where they're like, okay, after this event, we can't go into space. So that's one aspect. Yeah. The second is then their attempt to go back, which from an eschatological perspective, when you read the Quran, and the Quran saying, oh, man and jinn, if you have the power, then go. And then now you have these people having this particular person, Jason Parson, or Jack Parsons.
Jack
Parson, right? Having a dream of making the rocket fuel and trying to get to space. And all of these things seem to me to be interconnected.
Yeah, they are interconnected. Now, actually, from my point of view, it's not that the jinn could no longer get to space. They could no longer get to, let us say the court of Allah and his angels, conceiving Allah as a king and the angels as the courtiers, which is a very traditional view. They could no longer listen in on
That's right, yes.
spiritual information, spiritual realities.
Mm-hmm.
And this is there are a lot of considerations here. I believe there have been periods in human history where the jinn, and these would be the faithful, the kafir jinn, had an actual role in being intermediaries between God and humanity, or between, let's say, the gods, who the Muslims and the Christians would see as the angels, and humanity. It depends upon, I mean, the reason the Quran was sent is because the direct communication between humanity and Allah had eroded over the ages. And at one point, when that all religions, all major civilizations start with a Unitarianism. I believe that they start with a revelation of,
so a harmony between the angels and okay,
yeah, and a revelation of Allah to humanity, and but then as that becomes veiled over the centuries in various traditions, then you will have beings like the jinn, subtle, call them subtle material beings, but also, who have access to higher levels of reality on certain occasions than humanity can reach, without their aid. And they will be intermediaries sometimes. I mean, you go back to the Delphic Oracle. It's very interesting. The Delphic Oracle, originally, the priestesses of the Delphic Oracle served a being that was called the Python. The Python was like, a snake-like being who is supposed to represent wisdom, and then later the sanctuary Delphi was taken over by another group of people, and by Apollo. And Apollo was a celestial god. So now Apollo was the god that they turned to. But maybe they turned still to him with the help of the Python. So, the Apollo, and this is all sort of a distant reflection of what a direct divine revelation like the Quran would be. You're seeing it through a lot of veils. But, there's a celestial influence that's called Apollo, and but the way you connect with it is through a subtle material or intermediary or jinnish influence like the Python. It's very hard to get a clear picture of what was going on there. But there might have been times, and the jinn who are faithful might be what the Kachina deities of the Pueblo Indians of the American Southwest are, or you could call them angels. It's very hard, to be hard and fast about this.
It's interesting you say that, because there's a verse in the Quran talking about the jinns, specifically referring to American Indians, where the Quran says, "Ista'atum." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you benefited greatly from the jinns. So there were some civilizations who had a positive role. Like, I'll give you an example.
Yes.
They would be able to tell people which herbs to use for which disease.
Exactly. That's how the shamans learned a lot of their healing.
I wish that I knew where that. I know the verse is stuck. So
If you find where that is,
tell
me, because that's really important. I love it when you find something in the Quran that confirms something that I was very uncertain about myself. So.
I'm going to show you that verse. I'm going to call the brother. Inshallah, he'll pick up. If not, he'll call back, hopefully. But either way, I'll get you the verse. Let me just call him right now. استعتم استكثرتم استعتم. Because me and him were talking about this verse, and let's see, inshallah, if he picks up. Otherwise, I will get you that verse, because he brought that verse to me, and he's like, this is kind of like what the Native Americans and the others were doing. They were like benefiting from one another, or they had a positive relationship, right? But something happened over time in Babylon, for example, and with the kingdom of Suleiman, where it became a very negative thing, or a very negative phenomenon.
Exactly. And it may simply be that the darker jinn, conquered areas of the kingdoms of the jinn and took over. I mean, however you want to look at it. Actually, a lot of the story of that level of things is told or is suggested in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings cycle. You're seeing a lot of those things go on. You're seeing the Kafir jinn would be the elves. Not the Kafir jinn, the Mu'min jinn would be the elves. The Kafir jinn would be the orcs. And you have to be careful, because this is obviously fiction and you don't want to take it too literally and all this, but it suggests what the kind of stuff that might have been going on and might be going on now in that in that subtle world, which we don't have to know about. All we have to know about is our relationship as human beings to Allah. That's where our responsibility lies. But if these other realities impinge upon us without our wanting them, then maybe it's there's some understanding.
Our goal is to get to Allah, but then we have certain tribulations or trials and deceptions that are coming in the way. And so, and there have been time periods, I will say, that many of the great scholars of Islam, at one level or another, had a positive relationship with the jinns that were Muslims specifically. Like Shawliullah Muhaddith Dalvi rahmatullah alayhi, for him, he talks about it. Other scholars have talked about it. And so there have been, and in fact, there are narrations of traditions of the Prophet that come specifically from jinns. Some of the narrators were known to be jinns. In the Hadith Sanad is there till today in our tradition.
I didn't know that. That's it, because the Quran was sent, and the Prophet was sent as a mercy to men and jinn. So that's true. What is extremely interesting. I'm going just before I got your Zoom link, I was in contact, which I am from time to time, with a very interesting group of people, which includes mad scientists. Like Jack Sarfati, includes a lot of the major UFO people, Christopher Mellon, who was, I think he was Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence in the Clinton administration. Uri Geller, the paranormal spoon bender that some people may remember. A lot of people who were involved in the Stanford Research Institute's studies of remote viewing, along with the CIA and many other intelligence groups. All these people, and some just, halfway decent believers in this or that, spiritual path, who are also in contact with these people. And I was just talking about I was talking, because these people, one person just wrote me and said, why do you have this moral, uptightness about remote viewing? Because, we're in touch with these beings, and they're very powerful, and they can show us different places and times. And I've been in touch with them. And listen, this isn't Sunday school, Charles. This is real, And I was just having this communication with these people, and I got back and said, well, these, from our point of view, would be the jinn. And just because they can show you other places and times, which is understandable, because the relationship of the jinn to time is different than our linear time. I think that's pretty true. But, just because they can do these things doesn't mean that they're all loving, all knowing, all wise, all just, and all powerful, or that they're necessarily telling you the truth. And that Christian and Muslim saints have been clairvoyant, have had, let's say, remote viewing, but that's not because they wanted to develop their psychic power to do remote viewing because that would be hip and that would be interesting and they could, use it. It's because they put all their attention on Allah, and then Allah opened those faculties for His own purposes, because that could be of help to them or help to others. And so they're two totally different approaches to psychic powers. And all the religious authorities that I trust say don't seek psychic powers on their own. Don't try to learn clairvoyance, try to learn this. Seek God and seek Allah, and He
Allah will open the doors.
If necessary, if he wants to, and so I was just talking with these people. It was amazing, and they're really, and they're serious.
This is the verse, Brother Charles.
If we don't develop our powers of remote viewing, the evil ones who control the world will destroy the world, and we have to fight them. We have to save the world. That they're very motivated in that way.
So here's the verse. يَوْمَ يَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا. On the day we will gather them all together, and Allah will say, very close to the same words in that Surah Rahman, where Allah says, Ya ma'ashar al-jinni wal-insi, O jinn and O assembly of jinn and men. So, Ya ma'ashar al-jinni, O assembly of jinn, قَدْ اسْتَكْثَرْتُمْ مِنَ الْإِنس. You exceeded in numbers, or that's one way to translate it, or you increased more than man. This can mean in different ways, but you were more than men. وَقَالَ أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمْ مِنَ الْإِنسِ. And their one of their friends amongst the humans will say, رَبَّنَا istamta'a. We benefited. We sought to benefit, or we did benefit. بَعْضُنَا بِبَعْضٍ. Some of us with the others, meaning we benefited the jinn and the jinn benefited from us. Here's the one time, one of the few places where, or actually, the whole Surah al-Jinn is showing a positive relationship in a sense.
Yeah.
But here's another. We istamta'na. Sorry, I have dyslexia, so sometimes I see things. Istamta'a ba'duna bi ba'din wa balagna ajalana. We benefited one from the other, and we reached our appointed time. Okay. Alladhi ajjalta lana, the one that you put for us. And then Allah says, okay, some of you are now going to go to the fire. But here is that point that I was trying to say, that there was a time, and even today, maybe, possibly.
Yes, even today, in other, for example, in earlier years, I went to see the psychic surgeons in the Philippines because my faith was weak, and I said to God, show me, prove that there's more than the world I see with my five senses. I want to see signs and wonders,
Yes.
because my faith was weak.
Yes.
And so He let me see the signs and wonders, and the psychic surgeons, and actually they were coming to California for a while. So I saw them a number of times in California. And I traveled once to the Philippines and went to, saw them in Manila, and went up to Baguio up in the mountains and saw them. And they do have this power to reach into your body with their hands and pull out diseased material. And then the incision closes immediately with a minimum of pain or no pain. There's a little bit of blood. And then it's as if it never happened, except, that they have definite healing abilities. And so these are people, and if you study the history of shamanism, you will know that this kind of power has been reported by shamans in various parts of the world, and they do it by working with helpful jinn. This was, this kind of magic was important when we didn't have our kind of technology today. This was like part of the technology of the tribe. It was basically a survival thing. This is how you heal. This is how you
like finding water.
Yeah, finding water, finding game, perhaps bringing rain, things, without which the tribe might die out. So Allah allows this because this is how you survive, But in fact, there's a great story that was told by Jean Cocteau. You know Jean Cocteau, that name?
No.
He's he was a French poet, writer, and filmmaker, and he told a story of some anthropologist who went to Haiti, because Haiti's is big with voodoo and all this. And,
yes.
One of the things that apparently they did in Haiti was they could talk to each other through trees. It's like a woman's husband would leave and go to town to go to market, and she would talk to a tree, and the tree would relay the message to him, and he'd talk back to her through the tree. And so the anthropologist says, well, why do you talk to each other through trees? Well, why do you do this? And the answer was, well, because we're poor. If we're rich, we would have the telephone. It's just like that. It's like part of the technology of more primal peoples. That is allowed because it's necessary for survival.
And there's a narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which seems to indicate that Dajjal will control the human world, but also the jinn world.
Yeah.
So he's going to pervert this.
Yeah.
Or the system will pervert it. And in fact, it will go to the point where, according to one narration, he will say, I conquered the people of the earth, and now I've conquered the people of the heaven, which could refer to the jinns and the angels or something. And he'll show people, here's the blood, and now I'm the God. Right. So it seems to me, one of my sheikhs, Dr. he did the research on this, and he said, there seems to be 3 phases, right? So whereas one is he's the Messiah, and then another where he's a prophet, and then finally where he claims to be God. And then there's the fitna of the Dajjal, which is the social phenomenon that leads to that person being thrown up. And anyway, so I was
our universal fear of the destruction of the world that's right in front of everybody's consciousness now, that's directly being exploited by the people who want to bring in the UFO religion, because they say only the UFOs can save us, like from nuclear war, because sometimes the UFOs have appeared over nuclear facilities and turned all the missiles off,
right. Yes.
Or the other thing they did is they started the firing sequence, and then just at the last minute they shut it down. So in other words, they're saying we have control over this technology, and if you worship us, we will not let you destroy yourselves. And that's a very powerful inducement.
Subhanallah. Yeah, I want to share with you 2 other verses of the Quran on this subject, and bring these 2 verses actually together. So 2 parts of the Quran, and then I want to see what your feelings would be on these 2 parts. One is in Surah Al-Mulk. So here's Surah Al-Mulk, and the other is going to be in Surah Al-Jinn, right? So this is where they start talking about ayah number 8. وَأَنَّا لَمَسْنَا السَّمَاءَ فَوَجَدْنَاهَا مُلِيَتْ حَرَسًا شَدِيدًا وَشُهُوبًا. And we felt the sky all of a sudden after the coming down of the Quran. We found it filled with like some sort of shield, right? And like a guard, harasan shadidan wa shuhuba, and like a strong guard, and something that would throw, you can say, I guess, what would it be? Something that you'd throw, not meteoroids, but something of fire, some.
Yeah, and it's often translated as fiery meteors, assuming that's what the projectiles were.
And then they say, وَكُنَّا نَقْعُدُ مِنْهَا مَقَاعِدَ لِلسَّمْعِ. This is very, and to me at least, I feel this is very interesting. And we used to sit in positions to listen in.
Yes.
In the sky, right? So they were allowed at that time to listen in, and then they would go down to the earth and tell that information for good or for bad, right? So like the example you gave of the lady talking to the tree, that could be an example of when, maybe not that particular example, but they come down and let human being know that, for example, that X tribe is going to attack you, so it's better for you to move, right? Versus coming down to a psychic who is going to now lead people astray using the information from the heavens. And فَمَنْ يَسْتَمِعِ الْآنِ, and whoever listens to them now, يَجِدْ لَهُ شِهَابًا رَصَدًا. And then the jinns are saying, and now when we go, we find these projectiles thrown at us. And then they're worried. And in fact, some of the explainers of Quran, they say that the jinns were worried, is the earth coming to an end itself? Because this is a big deal for them.
Yes, yeah, they also worry about the end of the earth, the end of the world. Definitely, you can see that in a lot of the things they say. They say, for example, we have to hybridize between our race and the human race and create alien human hybrids, because that's the only way the human race can survive. So they're
لا ندري أشر أريد بمن في الأرض أم أراد بي ربهم رشدا. We don't know if Allah isn't, by stopping them from going to the sky, if Allah's intention is that some evil come on earth because of now this big event in their world has happened.
Yes.
Or is it that Allah is wanting to guide them because Allah is trying to stop something evil from happening?
Yes, and there's obviously a difference of opinion among these people. Now, I don't know how the positive jinn would manifest to the human race in times like this, because the negative jinn, the kafir jinn, have such power now. I mean, it's as if they are taking over the jinn world.
That is absolutely true. I mean, from the ruqya that we do, the Muslim jinns are very weak compared to, meaning they're not in the powerful state. And the devil jinns have become arrogant and have become, they like, I'll give you an example. When Iraqi will say to a jinn, I'm going to read Quran over you, there was a time where it'd be like, okay, I'm leaving, thank you very much, but you stay where you are. I'm going to leave even before you come. Now it's like, yeah, come on, recite your Quran on me and you can't do anything to me. I dare you.
Yeah. That's entirely plausible. Yeah. I have to confess that at one time in my life, I was very much seeking the jinn in terms of the nature spirits. Because we were hippies and we believed in nature, and the elves were friendly and good, and this whole thing, and we were pretty naive, But I mean, the one of the things is all living things have, everything has, as it were, a stem that goes from its outer manifestation all the way back to Allah through many worlds. And when it comes to the natural world on Earth, the jinn are one link. The faithful jinn are one link on that stem. And I always say that, I don't know if this was always true, but now the jinn who make themselves manifest are not to be trusted. The good jinn are just doing their job in the divine economy, and they don't particularly want to appear to humanity because they know they can lead humanity astray, even if that is not their intent, because they're very fascinating. They're from another world. They have different powers. You have a feeling of lightness and airiness and sparkliness, and you say, "Ooh, that's spiritual." And so, your attention gets hijacked by them, even if that's not what they want to do.
Yeah.
So they are very discreet. The good ones are discreet. The faithful ones
are discreet because one explanation that I've heard from the jinn world because when I do ruqya sometimes, and some of my friends do, and so we hear things, and some of it makes sense, and we try to put the puzzles together, and but like I said, you have to be very, very careful, right? You have to be very selective on what you're going to take, not take. This is a whole conversation in itself.
Yeah.
But one of the things I heard about the Muslim jinns being weak is that they said that we follow the lead of the humans.
Yes.
So if the majority are evil, we will, because they look up to humans in a sense. And we are also caught up in the same trends you guys are. And so if you guys are weak, we're going to be weak. And if the Muslims become strong and they become organized, we'll start, because we're like, aren't you guys organized? Like, don't you have a Jama'ah? Don't you have a leader?
We hold the amana, we hold the trust. It was offered to the heaven, the earth, and the hills, who ran away from it because it was too much for them. And then, humanity assumed it. And then it says, lo, he hath proved a tyrant and a fool, which is unfortunately largely true. But the amana, we're the central beings here. And this is why I wonder, and you can confirm whether other Muslim scholars have said this, that in an earlier world age, the jinn had the aman. They were the central beings for this planet, and then they did something very bad, or they became corrupt and they lost it, and Allah took it away from them, and and gave it to Adam, gave it to humanity. And this is, you look at it, Iblis, who was, supposedly a jinn among the angels, because the angels are a higher reality than these jinn. It's important to be able to distinguish. The angels have a different quality, and the ones that remain with Allah. Of course, the Christians say that angels can fall and become demons. Muslims say that angels can't fall, but what happened with Iblis, he was a jinn among the angels, and that's why he was capable of disobeying and falling. Well, this is debatable if you want to look at more than one religion. But in any case, you could just see Iblis is saying, Allah is saying, well, here's the new boss, Adam. He's the new boss of terrestrial existence. I'm going to give the job to him. I'm going to give the amana to him. Iblis is just fuming because, I've heard people say that Iblis thought all along that because of his great austerities and his great service to Allah, he was going to be given, the rule, but instead it was given to this guy, this newcomer, and Iblis said, never will I bow down to someone made of clay, because I'm made of smokeless fire, and so you can see that, and the myth of the earlier race of beings or race of divinities, or whatever you want to call them, before humanity and the gods of humanity, is told in many religions. I mean, I think the jinn are roughly equivalent to the giants in Norse mythology, the Jotun. They're roughly equivalent to the Asuras, or the warrior demons in Hinduism, who are always fighting with the Devas, who we would identify as Muslims with the angels, the realm of the gods, because they want to conquer heaven. That's there. In Greek mythology, the Titans, ruled this world, and the heavens of this world before the Olympian gods came along, and so they're very similar myths. That interesting that there's a tribe of the jinn called Al-Asr, and this is, I swear, it must be the same word as the Asuras, or as the Aesir, who are the Norse gods. It's the same. Every mythology has a little different take on it, but it's a similar thing. There was an earlier race of gods or divinities before, the present, spiritual establishment, if you will, and they were deposed, and they want to get back, and their attempt to get back is what, at least according to the Norse view, is going to bring about the end of the world.
So the next part of the Quran that, and then I want to go back into where we started with the whole UFO phenomenon, but I want, because we tied it with the jinns, that's why I wanted to so in ayah number 5 is the Mulk, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا, and we beautified the sky of dunya, meaning the sky of dunya is the known galaxy as we know it, everything that's bright. وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِمَصَابِيحَ, and we beautified the sky of the earth with lamps or combustion, okay? وَجَعَلْنَاهَا رُجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينَ, and they also were the source of you can say missiles. Rajuman means to throw darts. So there's something about their magnetic field or something that comes from them that affects the world of shayateen. وَأَعْتَدْنَا لَهُمْ عَذَابَ السَّعِيرِ, and we prepared for them a painful punishment. Who are those? Those are those jinns that go to keep trying to go, and this is why I was going to connect this with the UFO and space agencies, is that their quality is that in the previous surah it said we used to sit and listen. The sentence there in Surah Jinn is in the past tense, meaning we're not doing that anymore. Here, about the evil jinns, it's saying that وَجَعَلْنَاهَ رَجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينَ, and we made it a projectile against the jinns, against the shayateen is the word used here, okay? Against the رَجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينَ. So those jinns that persist in trying to want to go back up, okay? And so Allah says, and we prepared the hellfire for them. Why? Because they're not going up for good reasons, or they're not going up to have a harmony with human beings and a relationship of harmony. They're going up because they have some negative intentions. In that backdrop is how I see the UFO phenomenon. A group of shayateen, a group of jinns. Not all of them necessarily are shayateen. Some could be maybe good. I don't know. But a lot of those that are at least talking with space agencies, like, for example, let me just share with you this one example, maybe if Allah allows. Former Israeli space security chief says extraterrestrials exist and Trump knows about it. So these kind of Pentagon statements where they I think 2-3 years ago they released a whole bunch of files on on pilots.
And the idea that the space aliens have been in contact with US presidents goes back quite a ways. I mean, the myth is that they made a treaty with Eisenhower, so.
Yeah, that's and I'm gonna maybe come to that at some point, but over here what I wanted to share with you is that there seems to be a special relationship between UFOs and Zionism. So I'm gonna delve into that as we talk and show different aspects of that.
That's very interesting. There's a video which may still be on YouTube, which at one point showed something which appears to be a UFO coming directly down above the Dome of the Rock.
Yes.
And then it hangs there for a minute, and then it shoots directly up, which is like a counterfeit of the Mirage.
Oh, right? Interesting. Yes.
That's what it is.
That's right. Yes. So what's interesting about that same story, by the way, is that there was a group of Jews that said that the other world, the jinn world, had told them that Zionism is not a good project to be part of. So these Jews in Israel announced they're kind of like, oh, we don't want to have anything to do with Zionism. And then sometime right after that, this event happens.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I know the Neturite Karta, who are, very extreme, Orthodox Jews who consider the whole Zionist enterprise to be a counterfeit and an attempt to force the appearance of the Messiah, and so they reject it.
So yeah, so part of that, there's no place on Earth that would be best for a terrestrial landing than the Dome of the Rock, because everyone would be like, "Oh, that's our Messiah."
Of course, and in Christian eschatology and in Eastern Orthodox eschatology, the idea is very prominent that the Antichrist will rule, Dajjal, the Antichrist will rule from Jerusalem, perhaps from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre rather than from the Dome of the Rock, but it's very similar.
Yeah.
And there are relationships between, there's I should send this to you. I think I probably said I was going to send it to you before and never did. There's an article some years ago in the Jerusalem Post where Shimon Peres meeting with the Pope and says there needs to be, you need to be the Pope of one world religion, which will unite all the religions. And this is Shimon Peres saying this, and the Pope says, very interesting, we take this under advisement, we will consider it. We will make no commitments at this time. But very, very telling story.
Yes. I'd like to share quickly, if you have time, just a few things. So here's the secret Jewish history of UFOs and why Ezekiel may have had a close encounter. So according to, again, there are passages of the Bible and the Torah, however you want to consider it, that they use. And this also connects to, I'll give you an example. Like, for example, this man, he's talking about aliens, okay? And he's talking in the Jewish language. And, he's saying, he's basically talking about the jinns. He's coming to the same conclusion that it's something from a different dimension. He's saying the fastest phenomenon in the world we live in is light, and to tell me that aliens are coming from billions of light years away now in this world of time and space that we exist in doesn't make sense. So it has to be from other dimensions. And he talks about how in the state of Israel, like, let's see if I can get to that part. He talks about in the state of Israel, there are 18 hospitals in which jinns work in, or these entities, these aliens work in. And he talks about how this is, a positive thing. And anyone can go to this and you can read the subtitles. But I'm trying to see if I can find that part. Yeah, here. Maybe you can read the subtitles.
Yeah.
Community of aliens that sometimes participates in aid and treatments.
Well, that would certainly be in line with my experience with the psychic surgeons, that they were working with jinns.
Says that we have alternative medical techniques that utilize aliens.
And this is how the shamans operated, pretty much.
Yeah. So he talks about this, and he's skeptical, but he's saying, well, there are too many witnesses to deny it, so it has to have some reality. And he's like, he's trying to, I guess, deal with this. But this is becoming very popular, especially in Israel. And so let me just quickly share with you. I don't know how much time. You can let me know when we're running out of time, and then I'll work accordingly to this. One of the things that's very interesting, by the way, this was the person I was talking about, alien believing group and support for Zionism, because aliens.
The Raelians are bad news. Some years ago, they claimed to have cloned the first human being. So.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Okay.
And actually, Rael that this appears in one of Jacques Vallée's books. He appeared with, he's as a robe and a beard, and he appears with a medallion, which is an amalgam of a Star of David and a swastika.
Yeah, and remember this swastika. I'm going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with, I think, where things are trending. Now, here's an example, because I don't want to leave everything just on the negative. Here's an example of a Christian pastor who's talking about how this whole idea of the UFOs falls into the third temple, Antichrist, and he has this whole article here that I'm not going to go over.
Yeah.
But it's still interesting that even within and then here's exotheology, okay? Space age interpretations of the Bible.
I was in touch with, what was his name? Joel Parkin, who wrote a book on exotheology. Now, as far as I could tell, he was starting at least with the idea, if in our space program we discover real aliens, how will that affect Christian theology on this planet? But there were indications that he was going to go further than that and start to talk about interdimensional beings. I'm not sure, but we were, we were both on at different times on Coast to Coast AM radio.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
Joel Parkin. So we were interviewed by George Nuri.
Yeah. Okay. I used to listen to them at one time.
A conference between people who believe the scientific astronaut theory, and people believe in interdimensional beings, and people, and religious people, and it was a great idea. And we said, great, let's do it. But I never heard from him again. So it'd be quite a logistical challenge.
Right. Yeah. I used to listen to George Nuri every once in a while at night whenever I had time, Coast to Coast. Interesting program. And so what I've realized is that many Muslims are also beginning to do this like exo space age type theology, interpreting the Quran outside the classical way. There's not necessarily a problem with that. The only problem is, I don't mind new interpretations of Quran, because that will naturally happen. What becomes a problem is when you're going against the tradition.
Exactly, and you could do that without realizing it. The whole thing is we need to put our attention on Allah. We don't invoke even angels. We don't say, that's what the New Age says. I remember a couple of New Age people were talking somewhere, writing to each other, and they say, what's your favorite angel? Mine's Raphael, Oh no, my favorite angel, and you're going to invoke the angels. Well, what we need to do is invoke, and by invoke I don't mean summon to appear. Remember. We need to remember Allah. Then, if He elects to send an angel, that is His business. We don't go after the angels, because if we go after the angels, even if they're very positive and wonderful beings, that's the first step toward polytheism, because we're considering them apart from the will of Allah, and somewhere down the road they're going to become gods. In our mind.
I think this is an extremely important point for the future of Muslims, because and this is extremely important. Anything that's in the unseen, except for Allah, you cannot invoke them, you cannot summon them, you cannot ask for their help. So even if a Muslim jinn comes to you, you don't ask for their help.
Even if an angel comes to you,
even an angel, because you wouldn't even know. But yeah. So this is a very important point. When it comes to the unseen, in the unseen world, it's directly between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nothing else.
Yes.
I think this is where a lot of people are getting tricked. And this is why, even if you are in the sciences of tasawwuf, or if you're in the sciences of purification of the soul, the Sharia comes first still, meaning the law, the commandment. You don't ever break them because of whatever experience somebody might be happening. And part of that is even the angel that's to my right and to my left, I can't ask them for help.
Right. And if you see them, it's by Allah's will, and so you refer the whole experience back to him.
Yes.
I mean, it's like I say, if let's say the postman is coming and bringing you a letter from your beloved who's in some distant city, and the postman comes with a letter. Well, you don't kiss the postman, right? You don't say I love you. No, you take the letter and read it, and you remember the beloved who's in the distant city, even though she may be distant. She's your real beloved, and the postman is just a messenger, and he's not to be, don't give your attention to him. So.
Okay, so let me just continue here because I want to really know your thoughts about some of these things. Let's see. What do we have here? Oh, so here's an example of a Christian group that's obsessed with UFOs. And so the previous one I gave you the example of Christian group that's against UFOs and considered part of but then you have this whole thing that's emerging more and more. This is not traditionally part of the Christian way of thinking.
Right.
And this is another example of the wing of abominations in Daniel, a demon-powered UFO. So now there was a series of YouTube videos that I want to go over. I don't want us to watch them because then the whole lecture would become, the whole conversation would become okay, yeah, I do want us to keep this in mind. Israel's unbelievable neo-Nazis. So just keep this in mind.
Yeah. Finally, I mean, it was a lot of people have said for a long time that some of the radical Zionists are an awful lot like Nazis, but when they actually come out as Nazis, that's quite a step,
So, again, I just want to give these titles. Ancient Aliens Project Blue Book. So this is just about the same issue that we were talking about. Let me just move on forward. This is about the Blue Beam Project. People can look that up themselves. We do know that some sightings were. And let's see what this is. Stuff they don't want you to know. Same thing, Blue Beam Project. Basically, these were investigations done. Oh, this is about. We can just skip this. This is not important right now. The most important historical documents. Yeah. So this is, and then they're trying to connect a lot of this with the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, yes.
And they're trying to connect, and the Ark of Covenant directly connects to Israel, right? Yeah. And so they're trying to say the Ark of Covenant was, had electricity and
I mean, this is the Raiders of the Lost Ark, theory. That it was, an incredibly, it was some kind of technology with, that gave power to the Israelites. The first time I heard that was in a book called Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann. And what was very interesting, that this was the story of a genius German classical musician who was slowly going crazy. He probably had, syphilis, and that was affecting his brain. And he would visions. Once he had a vision of the devil that came and talked to him, and so he was like, the genius who had gone over to evil through his genius, and particularly in German mode. And this is the story of him. But one of the episodes is talking about these gatherings, these soirees, these salons that would happen before World War II, and all the people that would collect, the sort of bohemian type people who would collect and talk to each other. And it was amazing. You would get, communists and proto-Nazis and people with radical art theories, and all these people thrown together because they were all not part of established bourgeois society, so they ended up, by default in Bohemia, and one of them was some kind of perhaps Zionist or Jew who was talking about, how the true tradition of Judaism has been lost, and taking it back to what the original, and finally when he got back to it, he got back to the Ark of the Covenant and said this was a form of powerful technology that we have lost. And that was quite a while ago, they were saying, well, technology simply means something humanity can control. We know the equations, we know the technique, we can build this thing. If we don't like the God that created us and that it has been, cramping our style ever since, we can build a God of our own, and that's technology. And this is, and also you want to talk about Zionism and the UFOs, a major figure.
By that definition,
it's
very interesting you gave it that definition, because idols would work as tools too.
Exactly. Right? And you're finally going to get, with artificial intelligence and robots and stuff, you're going to get an idol that could walk and talk and think and answer your questions and
be your friend,
do your bidding while it is actually, taking over your soul and controlling you. And that's, I mean, the whole idea of don't worship statues, don't build statues, was almost looking forward to this time where artificial life forms could really come and have a terrible deleterious effect upon humanity.
I mean, that is a whole podcast in itself, because when you try to see the type of arms and everything and the superpowers they give them, and like Thor, and that's just all different.
All those superheroes are what the Hindus would call the asuras, the warrior demons, and exactly what they are. And and it's so common. I sometimes wondering if there shouldn't be a poll of like young Americans, teenagers, and just say, what would you rather do? Would you rather live a life where you could become self-supporting and responsible and get married and have family, have children, and live that kind of life? Or would you like superpowers and be able to travel in time, and make things happen at a distance, and send lightning bolts from your fingers? Which would you want if they were mutually exclusive, which I sort of believe they are? Which would you want? You get a very large percentage of people saying, I want the magic. In fact, there's a very interesting article by Esme Partridge is her name, that one of my Sufi brothers sent me. And she's talking about on TikTok, the large witch covens of hundreds of thousands of young girls that are on witch talk, and they're sharing spells with each other. And, they're saying, and they're all witches. And like she quotes one who contacted Shaitan through a Ouija board or something like this, and is talking about her experience. And then another girl says, oh, could you introduce me to Shaitan? He sounds nice. I'd like to meet him. And this, and beyond that, in the UFO world, there are two groups. One, the Disclosure Project, run by what's his? I'll remember in a minute. Anyway, the other one is the To the Stars Academy, run by Tom DeLonge, and then the other is the Disclosure Project, and both of them apparently provide you with apps that will teach you how to invoke UFO aliens, and how, through your imagination. Perhaps the apps, I haven't looked at them. Perhaps you can electronically communicate with with an artificial intelligence alien or something like this and get answers. But they also teach you how to go out, on the hilltop at night and do remote viewing or whatever they call it, and invoke the aliens. So this is a mass attempt to set up demonic invocation.
Yeah, I want to share this with you and see what you have to say. So I wasn't referring to this specific. This is from Harvard University, but Wicca is the fastest growing religion in America.
Yeah, Could
And
be.
this has become the new spirituality, right? So what is happening is Muslims, Christians, perhaps even Jews, even Hindus, the type of spirituality they're looking for is like the pagan version of it.
Yeah, even if they don't call it Wicca, it has a lot of the same features.
Yeah. And so, Muslims are interested, and this is beginning to happen in Arabia now, where they're interested in yoga and meditation. Not that there's something wrong with yoga itself necessarily, but it's just where it all goes. It's where all
Yeah, it's where it all goes. I mean, the people who do yoga, are not firmly within a Hindu tradition, because after all, traditionally, you have to be born into one of the castes to be a traditional Hindu. And then you have these Hindu gurus come to the West and say, well, we represent, the stage beyond the castes, where the sannyasin renounces caste, and they may have some validity, I don't know, but the way it all goes. See, the thing is, it comes to the point where God, Al-Ahad, the one, becomes implausible, becomes hard to conceive of, or sort of irksome. It's so much easier to contact a spook of one kind or another, because the truth is, it's hard to get rid of them. The world is just packed with them, and they're everywhere, and they're trying to make contact with us, and you say, oh, that's what's easy. Whereas why do God? He's so far away, and he's so, I remember years ago, in the hippie era, where I was up in Canada, tripping around with various hippies, hitchhiking and stuff, and there's one hippie that said to me, unity is boring. Unity is boring. Like God is boring, or God is irksome, or God is just, you have to have all these rules, and but it's so much easier and finally more plausible to connect with spirits or jinn of various kinds. In the anthropologists recognize this in African religion, which has of course been with us for probably longer than any other tradition on earth. I mean, that's incredibly ancient. There was some cave recently discovered by the West somewhere in Africa, which had a statue of a python carved onto the wall, or a statue of a serpent. And the cave was dated at 70,000 years old. And the tribe in that area still worships that same divinity. So that's pretty old.
Wow.
But what the anthropologists determined is that all of these, or many of these African religions, have a sense of the one God, but they say, oh yeah, the creator, yeah, oh yeah, him, yeah, he used to, I guess, a long time ago we used to relate to him, talk to him, but then I think we did something bad, and he got disgusted with us, and he left, and he went back into the sky. So we don't talk to him anymore. He doesn't talk to us. So, but we talk to the spirits of the ancestors, or the orishas, or whatever they are.
That's interesting.
That's what happens in the history of religion. It starts out Unitarian, and then it degenerates into polytheism. And this is, you can see this happening in Christianity when our present Pope at one point on a interview with Vatican radio actually said, and this was on the Vatican website for a long time, he said, God does not exist. He said, but that's okay, because we have the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now, originally, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit were not three gods. This is a conception of the divinity that came to the Christians, but it's part of the Nicene Creed, which begins with the words credo in unum Deum, I believe in one God, which is the same thing as La ilaha illallah in Islam, and the same thing as Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad in Judaism, one God. But now the Pope himself is saying, essentially, we have three pagan gods, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So that's how things degenerate, and they always go that way. That's what I think. And now we see it
about the jinn world
in Islam.
Yes, talking about the jinn world, in Surah Al-Jinn, ayah number 6, وأنه كان رجال من الإنس يعوذون برجال من الجن. So some of the human individuals would seek the refuge of the jinns, of the men amongst the jinns. And then Allah says, فَزَادُهُمْ رَحَقًا, and that only caused them to become confused.
Now, does them refer to the humans or the jinn?
فَزَادُهُمْ, it refers to both, literally.
Yeah, because if I always read that verse as to mean that if you worship the jinn, you corrupt them. I mean, if people worship you, doesn't that have a corrupting influence?
Yeah,
on
actually, you're like
off?
so amazingly right that it's interesting you just said that, because when you're looking at this, the guy, the jinn that's saying these words is complaining, and he's saying to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which then Allah is revealing to the in the Quran, that they're complaining that we all went in confusion because why were the humans asking us for protection, right? And absolutely, within the wordings of the Quran, this can be 100% understood to mean that. And إنه كان رجال من الإنس يعوذون برجال من الجن فزادهم رهقا. And then it continues to, he complains, he's complaining, وأنهم ظنوا كما ظننتم أن لن يبعث الله أحدا. And they thought, as you thought, that Allah would not resurrect anyone in the day of judgment. So they thought this is it. And, they became...
The jinn can be materialists as well.
Yeah. So, and, of course, shaitan in their own world is causing his own confusion. And then man is doing this, and then that's causing them that confusion.
Yeah.
And shaitan's taking advantage of all of this. And now it's come to the UFOs. So
yeah, and the thing is in Islam, we're not supposed to rise and conquer the heavens, not to speak against Judaism, which is a real revelation from Allah, but when the Jews pray, they go like this, which means that they're supposed to be riding invisible horses, and you get the feeling. Where is it in the Quran that says, it's as if they're trying to rise higher and higher? I forget what that verse was, but it's saying our way is not rising higher and higher, and having spiritual aspiration to directly get to heaven. Our way is to remain below and let Allah shower His mercy upon us if it is His will. And that's just a basic difference in attitude.
Yeah.
And that's why Sufis, I believe, sway side to side. They sway side to side instead of going like this, because this is like represents openness to the reign of mercy.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Very interesting. Here's another one: ancient aliens, Bible shocking connection to the number 12, and that has to do with the whole UFOs and the zodiac signs and all that.
Yeah, and the 12 tribes and everything.
Of Israel, yes. So
according to scripture, the prophet Ezekiel witnessed fiery wheels in the sky. He considered them divine.
So again, so there's this big attempt to reinterpret the Bible.
Yes.
To fit this UFO image. Now I'm going to share with you what Quran says in a second, and then I want to share with you some where
there's a new video this morning that some say
this is the one that you were talking about.
That,
that's the video that I guess I can just play.
Maybe proof we're not alone in the universe. UFO in the form of a seen descending over the dome of the rock in Jerusalem. The video is said to be taken over the weekend. Then suddenly the light shoots up into the sky. There you see it. Another video from a different angle appears to show the light doing the same thing. Those clips have gone viral now.
So now Dome of the Rock has been pointed out. And that has, of course, the third temple aspect to it. So does the
that, of course, could be easily a fake video, but we don't. But
that's right.
Get that idea up.
But
it comes to the same thing, I think.
Being fake wouldn't matter once it's viral. The damage has, in that sense, been done. And so I do want to share this verse of the Quran, which has to do with the creation of Allah and the creations of Allah on earth, which okay, I think we can just let that go for now. Yes.
Yeah, since we're on this subject, I would like to mention another name, Avi Loeb. Do you know that name?
No, I don't know.
He is very big in the UFO world. He's a Harvard astronomer. I believe he's an Israeli. People have said he's Mossad and all this kind of thing, like people say. But he's very much in, I believe, the Zionist UFO world. He just says outrageous, absurdly unscientific things under the umbrella of supposedly prestigious Harvard, which is not going to be prestigious much longer if they hire people like that. But so check into that name.
Okay, inshallah.
Loeb.
Now, going back, one of the people that was very interested in the UFO phenomenon or making contact with them was Hitler. And he worked on all these UFO projects, and people say he had a UFO project in the Antarctica.
The Bell thing, whatever that was.
Yeah, and so now he had a bunch of scientists, and a lot of those scientists were brought from Germany to the US in the Project Paperclip. And they're the ones that made the atomic bomb. And so that whole project kind of like continued.
Yes.
Now, why I think that is important is because one of the people that was, you can say, here's an example of how people,
in 1947.
so this guy, Admiral Richard Byrd, right? He's flying in the Antarctica, and he has a secret journal that got revealed.
Yeah, and whether this was actually Byrd or just attributed to him, I have no idea. But certainly, this is
so what's interesting about this is that he's flying, and all of a sudden the scenery changes. There's a mammoth, and it's no longer like a cold place, and he sees swastikas, right? And he's brought down, and these creatures are talking to him and telling him, oh, you guys have now made the atomic bomb. This is very bad. You need to give my message to the powers that be, that this is not a good thing. And then, so he's like, okay, I guess I have to go back and tell them. But this swastika that he saw is very interesting, because this is, of course, going back to Hitler and the whole UFO phenomenon with him. And one of the things that they believe in is that the earth is flat, and that there's a black sun, which is where the black sun and the swastika they're similar. And I think my feelings are that all these things are interconnected, because if a UFO comes to Earth, you can't believe in a universe where he came from millions of billions of light years.
Yeah, that's pretty soon. We are moving from that theory. That was a bridge theory to saying, people are still saying there are perhaps billions of inhabitable planets in the galaxy, or millions, and so some of them have got to have life, and some of them must have developed space travel. That's a bridge from materialistic ideation to paranormal ideation, and we're on the way, and pretty soon we're going to go into the paranormal, and everyone's going to say, well, that it's got to be paranormal or interdimensional, although they will still say you can make contact with that dimension through technology. That's not going to disappear.
Yeah, and so what's interesting is that, as we're moving from materialism to this kind of like pseudo-religious, that puts us in contact with jinn, but then it gives us the qualities of jinns, right? That fiery, anger, violent.
Jinnified, exactly. The human soul becomes jinnified. And people, when I look at things like extreme sports, look at the things that people do now. They jump off a mountain, a huge, 1,000, 2,000 foot cliff with just this weird, suit on where they have wings and they can glide. They're trying to become jinn.
Mhm.
They're trying to become jinn on skateboards. It's
Even the superheroes.
Yeah.
I actually had, wallahi, I'm telling you the truth. I had a jinn tell me that, oh, the superheroes, he's like, oh, Spider-Man, they're all versions of jinns. That's what he said.
He's right. That is true.
And I just found that was very interesting.
Jinn-like, they want to have the powers and because materialism, when belief in God and faith in God gets weak, the material world becomes terribly heavy and burdensome. You just think, and we think it's almost like another one of the Titans. And remember the Titans were probably an earlier version of the jinn. One of the Titans is Atlas, and his job is to hold the earth up on his shoulders. And it's a very hard job. You don't want to spend eternity holding up this material world, And so there's that feeling, but people want, as they're called in the West, the powers of the air, the powers of, there's a lightness and an ease of motion in the jinn world that becomes very attractive when the material world becomes such a burden. And it becomes a burden because we lose faith in God. If there was more love in the world, it would not be so burdensome.
Yeah, and I think this, material world has created a thirst for spirituality. But instead of giving real, organic, nutritious food, they want to give us like nachos or, some junk food.
Yeah.
That
or drugs.
Or drugs. There you go. Yeah. And even these drugs are working to promote this because people are taking drugs of certain types and they're like saying, I see these beings,
Yeah, I mean, when LSD became, and of course LSD was distributed to population broadcast by the CIA. The CIA and the CIA, a lot of the people in UFO organizations on the boards and things like this, are openly, to talk about the connections with the CIA. And the CIA at the same time, before the hippies even, was sending people to all the shamans around the world looking for psychedelic drugs they could use for mind control, or they could synthesize and spread over the enemy army to drive them crazy, or whatever their excuse was. But they were all magicians, or they were about to become magicians who were looking for magic power, and later this morphed into studying remote viewing and clairvoyance. They're magicians. It's interesting. The relationship between spy agencies and magicians goes way back.
Yeah.
Who was the first 007 in British intelligence? Was the magician John Dee. That was his designation, 007. And he was a magician. And
wow, mashallah.
Rudyard Kipling in his novel Kim talks about, people in the spy wars between the British Raj and Russia, who were essentially magicians, and that's, because it's very helpful to have magical powers if you're a spy, you can read people's minds. I mean, that's the whole idea, so.
Interesting, subhanAllah. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And inshallah.
There's more we could do just on UFOs, we could go, because you opened up, the Antarctic UFO myth, and that's a whole world into itself.
That's a whole world, yes.
The flat Earth or the hollow Earth, that's a whole, that's a whole world. We could just talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can continue next week if that works with you.
Yeah, because this isn't quite done. So
okay, inshallah, we'll continue next week, and we'll talk about the other components to this, including maybe flat Earth and the hollow Earth and Antarctica, and how that's all playing a role into this. Next week, I'd also like to talk about how Nazis also believe in flat Earth, and Judaism that's coming back meaning in that the reversion of into that flat. This kind of there's some strange,
because
in
Jerusalem
Ukraine.
cannot be literally the center of the earth unless the earth is flat.
Yeah.
Because it's right. It doesn't work. It doesn't work on a spherical globe.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that inshallah ta'ala and take it from there. So yeah, until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah.